Kia ora, I'm Pete from Garage Project.
Fort George Brewery.
Hop Products Australia.
Indie Hops.
And this is Siren.
I'm Hops
2025.
around the world. So my name is Martin, I'm a beer lover. I represent the Czech Beer Alliance project within Czech Trade, the Czech Republic government business body, and the aim is to introduce independent brewer to the UK.
So for time hops around the world, Saaz is a hop that I think has to be in there. It's a hop that's been around for hundreds of years. It makes iconic beers. It's one of those hops that just works so beautifully in a Czech lager, and so yeah, we wanted to add it into the group, and we worked with a great brewery to bring the hop to life and create a lovely beer.
Saaz, always aroma. That's sentence number one. Delicate and noble aroma. Because Saaz is so special, there is never enough of it that you can use in the beer, and some of the beers are just Saaz driven. You have got lagers that are single hopped, and if they are single hopped with Saaz, they are royal. It's an art, but it's really difficult to develop the right bitterness, and if you do it, then you have mastered it. The great historical thing I would say about Saaz is it used to be the Oswald's hop before Saaz, and it was really very, very wild. And when Mr. Groll, who invented actually the Pilsner Lager, firstly used Saaz, people didn't recommend it at all. They said, don't use Oswald's, and he did, and then Saaz became just famous, so I would always retain that. It made the revolution. Back in 1842, Saaz revolutionized brewing industry, and it was a critical part of this beautiful golden lager as opposed to the dark lagers we had in the past. So I think its contribution is massive. Well, I think what's really unique characteristic of Saaz is really the such low content of the alpha acids and a big content of the beta acids, and also the fact that if you work with Saaz, you need to take care of this delicate raw material, because it is so fragile. It is a plant that is super fragile, even to the point that the Americans developed the late Saaz and the other Saaz varieties that are a bit less fragile. But if you work with the original one, you've got a unique product. That's it, fragile but unique. Oh, that's the message from my part would really be, I mean, try a beer done according to traditional Bohemian recipe, mastered by really one of the best craft breweries in the UK, Siren. I mean, that's a sexy combo, isn't it?
G'day, my name's Owen Johnston. I'm CEO at Hop Products Australia, and my favourite hop is Galaxy.
Galaxy's a hop that I used really early on when it came out, and getting the big mango and passion fruit characters from Galaxy was beautiful. And Galaxy's had an interesting journey where it's gone from having this big juicy aroma to being quite harsh in beers, and I love the story of how Hop Products Australia have identified the problem, solved it by various things with blending lots together and homogenizing the hop, and getting it back to what it used to be. So yeah, using Galaxy now is great again, and we've got worked with Mountain Culture on some great techniques on how to use Galaxy now to get the best out of it.
I think back to the days when we went from a world in which beers didn't have Galaxy in it to all of a sudden this flavour bomb hitting the market. And here in our industry, in Australia, it was transformative. You know, when I think of what Galaxy brings to beers, I don't actually think of the big IPA styles. I think of long backyard sessions with super smashable beers and just that sociability piece, which for me is what beer is all about. I don't necessarily think that we harness the best bits of Galaxy just throwing it all in. I think it works over a great range of doses and in different beer styles. But definitely that backyard session, barbecue, good mates, that's what Galaxy means to me. And the beer I think of that best represents that is Stone & Wood's Pacific Ale, 100% Galaxy beer, and just such an important piece of the landscape here in Aussie craft and Aussie flavourful beer. I distinctly remember the first time I had that beer standing in the Rails pub in Byron, drinking a 10 ounce of this very cloudy beer, and it was just popping with classic Galaxy passion fruit. Absolutely delicious right from day one, and that made my eyebrows go right up. I think Galaxy's had an impact on the wider brewing community by helping, here in the Australian context, helping brewers really understand what modern Australian hops could bring to their beers, to aid in the delivery of delicious flavours, but also to bring different beers into what was a really mature beer flavour market. When HPA started rolling out their current array of flavour-forward hop varieties with Galaxy in the lead, the diversity of beer that we, the beer drinkers, had to choose from absolutely exploded. So Galaxy was really instrumental in driving this wonderful array of flavour that we have to choose from today. When you're enjoying this beer, I want you to close your eyes and think of bouncing kangaroos and koalas, and I'm only kidding. Just don't overthink it. Enjoy the flavours that Galaxy brings. If you like it, have another one.
Kia ora. My name is Pete Gillespie. I am head brewer and co-founder of Garage Project here in Wellington, New Zealand.
So Nelson Sauvin is a hop that just had to be in this. I think it's such an iconic hop. Nelson has a very unique character to it, which I think comes from the terroir of the soil and where it's grown. I think there's a really interesting story there, and New Zealand hops have become so popular based off the popularity of Nelson, and so Nelson had to be in it. And working with Garage Project, learning about how they select and use Nelson has been really, really interesting. And yeah, it's just one of those hops that had to be in the time hops around the world.
Nelson Sauvin is, it has to be said, the superstar of the New Zealand hop scene. It is a hop with unique flavour characteristics. I mean, even the name is a little nod to Sauvignon Blanc, the grape style that has become one of the most internationally popular New Zealand wine styles. Incredible aroma in Sauvignon Blanc grapes, and fascinatingly, Nelson Sauvin has exactly the same chemical compounds, whether it's something to do with the soil, the growing conditions in New Zealand. Both of them are bursting with aromatic thiols, lots of fascinating passion fruit, tropical fruit characters, gooseberry, all sorts of kind of like wine-like characters. It's a fascinating hop, incredibly versatile. It's a hop that we've loved working with and continue to enjoy working with. The beer that we've chosen is Pernicious Weed, one of the first, in fact the first Garage Project beer that we ever produced. It's two hops, Nelson Sauvin and Rakow. They're a wonderful combination. Nelson Sauvin is fantastic in the way that it plays with other hops and will be taken in different directions. Depending on what you pair with Nelson Sauvin, the characteristics will often be radically different. Nelson by itself can be quite white wine-like. We have a beer called Hops on Point, which we call a champagne pilsner, despite a number of cease and desist letters. That is like a New Zealand pilsner, lots of Nelson Sauvin, but the character that the Nelson Sauvin delivers in that beer is very bright, wine-like, gooseberry, bright citrus. Fascinating when you pair it with Rakow, the flavour takes a radical change. I mean, in Pernicious Weed, there's a very intense, punchy grapefruit character that we get. And now increasingly with the hops that we use from Freestyle, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later, increasingly with the hops we use from Freestyle, we get really intense passion fruit, tropical characters, and the Rakow really helps to draw that out of the Nelson Sauvin. So really cool hop. I mean, interestingly with Nelson Sauvin, I came across it when I was still brewing overseas. I was in Australia, I think, when I first used Nelson Sauvin. And it was so exciting. I grew up in New Zealand, but using a New Zealand hop overseas was exciting. Made me a little bit proud to be a Kiwi when you have a hop that's that exciting. And Nelson Sauvin is a fascinating hop because I feel like it has changed. At least the hops that we get have changed dramatically over the years. As I said, Pernicious Weed, the first beer that we ever brewed, almost over 14 years ago now, and we have never changed the recipe of Pernicious Weed. It is a very old school West Coast style IPA, but utilising 100% New Zealand hops. We've never changed the recipe, but having said that, the flavour of Pernicious Weed, I feel, has changed dramatically over the years because of the hops that we've been able to secure, particularly through Freestyle, who are a hop farm in Upper Mootry near Nelson in the top of the South Island. We have a very close relationship with Freestyle hops, and they have an attention to detail in the way that they grow the hops, the way they harvest and when they harvest the hops, and how they process them afterwards. Before that, before Freestyle came along, all the Nelson Sauvin in New Zealand was brought together and homogenised. There was no way of you selecting hops from a certain farm. There was just like this single brand Nelson Sauvin. Still an excellent hop, but what Freestyle offered us was the ability to actually go to the farm at harvest and select the lots that we liked best. The idea of homogenising hops is that it takes out high points and low points and gives you a kind of an on-brand character. But what's really exciting is working with farmers to actually try the hops. A great incentive for the farmer too to look at quality when they pick, and Freestyle have really pushed the picking window out, they found, and I agree with them, that the longer you leave the Nelson on the vine, the more expressive it can become. So instead of picking based on, just a date in the calendar, they spend a lot of time in the field rubbing hops, and I've been lucky enough in the last few years to be able to do this with them. So going out into the field every day, rubbing all the fields, seeing which ones are ready, which ones need to hang a little bit longer, and the result has been some incredibly tropical, expressive Nelson Sauvin, and that's what we use in Pernicious Weed. And that is why this beer, despite being 14, almost 15 years old, I think has stayed contemporary. The flavour of Pernicious Weed has changed because of the hops we use. It has gone from that very kind of like bright citrus, gooseberry maybe, but like, more one-dimensional character. It has taken this journey to become far more expressive and tropical, which is what it is today, and it just continues to become more and more popular as a beer. I'll tell you the story of the very first time we poured Pernicious Weed. It was the launch of Garage Project. At the time when we started Garage Project, we started brewing on a little 50-litre pilot plant. It was all we could afford in a disused, derelict petrol station in Ardo Valley in Wellington. We bought what at the time was probably the snazziest home brew kit we could find. It was a Brew Magic. I brewed at much bigger breweries in the UK and Australia, so this was definitely the smallest brewery that I had ever brewed on. And we brewed the first beers for our release party on this tiny little kit, and we brewed Pernicious Weed as one of them. So the launch party was being held at a bar in town, the craft beer kind of hub of Wellington. Hashigazaki was the name of the bar. And the whole bar was packed. There were media there were film crews. Everyone was super excited. There were no breweries in Wellington at the time, despite the fact that 57% of all the craft beer in New Zealand was drunk in Wellington. There were no breweries, so people were really excited to have a brewery back in the city again. So we were there. There were 3 beers on tap. Pernicious Weed was one of them. I was behind the bar with my brother Ian and Joss, who helped found Garage Project with me. And I went, they passed me a glass to do the first pour. I went to the Pernicious Weed tap, poured myself a glass of Pernicious Weed. Cheers to the audience, film crews are watching, had a big sip of it, and it tasted terrible. I was like, oh my God, all these people were waiting to have this beer, but it just tasted awful. I was like, oh my God, I imagine, like, did I just jump the bar and run away into the darkness and forget all about everything? And I was like, it just basically was like, oh, I grabbed another glass, poured a little bit more, and what it turned out was that there was just a little cleaning fluid still left in the line. Because we were on a 50-litre pilot plant, there was so little beer available. They'd been very, very concerned to pour too much beer through the tap line. So there was just a little bit of that cleaning chemical left, which made that first glass taste terrible. Glad that I got it and someone else didn't. But I poured a second glass, and there it was. It was Pernicious Weed. It tasted great. And the rest is history. We're still here. Yay. Nelson Sauvin single-handedly has propelled New Zealand hops into the limelight internationally for brewers. I mean, I think it's definitely still the superstar of New Zealand hop varietals. I mean, obviously there's loads of other fantastic hops in New Zealand, but it's Nelson that really was the breakthrough star. There were some very, very early craft beers in America that really shone the light on Nelson Sauvin and made it super famous. It continues, I think, to be one of the most sought after hops around the world, and rightly so, because, as I said, it is so versatile. It can take beers into all sorts of different directions. Yeah, one of the first beers in America that I remember utilizing Nelson Sauvin was there was a brewery called Alpine, and Alpine Nelson was an amazing beer. From memory, I think it utilised a little bit of Southern Cross and then a heavy dose of Nelson Sauvin. It was part of that first wave of West Coast IPAs, and it was punchy and intense, but I think the thing was that it just blew people's minds in America with that unique Nelson Sauvin character. A little touch of dankness, there's definitely a little weedy undernote, but then that incredible, like, punchy citrus grapefruit, huge kind of Sauvignon Blanc grape character, gooseberry, and then also passion fruit, tropical. It's a hop that just gives so much and can create so many different characters in so many different beer styles, whether it be a New Zealand Pilsner all the way through to the most intense, punchy IPAs. It's a very cool hop. I think the most surprising and cool thing about brewing with Nelson Sauvin is definitely the way it can manifest in so many different ways. I mean, I mentioned that before, but the hop that you pair Nelson with, I mean, it's great by itself. I mean, I like to think of it as an actor. It's an incredibly versatile actor. It can do a monologue, it can stand alone on a stage by itself and shine, but it's also incredibly good at playing with others. Different hops will draw out all sorts of different characteristics and take Nelson in different directions. It makes it an incredibly versatile hop. I don't think you could ever get bored of brewing with Nelson Sauvin because it will do so many things. If you put it in early in the boil, right at the very beginning, a lot of hops will only give you bitterness, but Nelson will imprint that beer with a distinctive Nelson Sauvin character all the way through. It is fantastic late in the boil, in the whirlpool. It's a wonderful dry hop. Pair it with Rakow, as in pernicious weed, and you've got a fantastic, like, tropical explosion. Pair it with Southern Cross, and you've got way more bright citrus. It plays well with Riwaka for an incredible New Zealand Pilsner. Motueka and Nelson go together wonderfully. There's almost nothing that it won't do. It also loves playing with hops from other countries and gives unique spins on, you know, Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe. It is so versatile. I could never get bored of it. Love it. Well, I hope you enjoy it. It should be a showcase of Nelson and Rakow. It's the hops that have made pernicious weed great, reimagined in a different way with the guys from Siren. It should be great fun. You should be tasting when you drink it that complexity that I've been talking about with Nelson Sauvin. Tropical fruit characters, guava sometimes, passion fruit. It will manifest in so many different ways, bright citrus, and then of course a little cheeky kind of weedy note as well. It's a very cool hop, and I feel confident that you'll love it. The collaboration with Siren for Time Hops is obviously heavily inspired by Pernicious Weed, which probably you'd have to call the Garage Project flagship beer. But this is a very modern interpretation. Pernicious Weed's a very old school West Coast IPA, unashamedly so, even though the shifts in Nelson and Rakow over the years with a relationship with freestyle hops have kept it contemporary. It's still at its heart, it's a West Coast. So what we've tried to do with this collaboration is take maybe a slightly more modern spin on Pernicious Weed, more of a California style IPA. It's fractionally less bitter, leaning in even more into that kind of like juicy tropical dry hop character. Look, it should be a fantastic beer for people to enjoy. It'll be great.
Should I do this for 5 minutes and that's the whole video?
That's the video.
Hi.
That's gonna make it into the B-roll.
I'm Jim Solberg, CEO of Indie Hops, and my favorite hop is Strata.
I'm Jeff Rowe from Loughran Brewers Select. Hi, I'm Michael Frankwitz, head brewer here at Fort George Brewery. I'm here to talk about Strata hops and why I love them.
Strata is one of the newer hops in the series, and it's bred by Jim from Indie Hops, and we've been fortunate enough to meet Jim and hang out with Jim and talk to him. I find him incredibly interesting, the way he thinks about hops and hop breeding, and Strata is just one of those hops that is going to be the next big thing, or is the next big thing. It's kind of got a blend of the, like we talk about such a mosaic and Simcoe being the holy trinity of hops, and Strata's just got a bit of all of those together, blended in. And working with Fort George on how to maximize Strata has been really, really interesting. We learned a lot from them, and yeah, I think this is the beer that we put the most hops in to really maximize the punchy character of Strata.
When I think of Strata, I think about the wafted cannabis component because it's so unique in that hop. I also think about a summer aroma that I remember as a kid growing up in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, where there's this plant. I think it's referred to generally as Indian tobacco that has a bloom and gets this incredible aroma that I immediately found in Strata the first time that we smelled it in 2012, as it was.
When I think about Strata, I think about, feels like a new hop. It feels like a hop that I've seen in beers in the last few years, and I think it's been an exciting hop. I think it's changed a little bit about how people think about beer, and it's changed the way I've drunk beer a little bit, in that it's made me peruse taps a little bit more. It's changed my personal connection about beer a little bit, in that I remember I went to Oregon. I was fortunate enough to go to Hop Harvest in Oregon, and I went into bars and I was drinking green hop beers a bit, and just every brewer that I met in a tap room was just absolutely hyped to have been brewing with Strata, and they were just talking about the different aromas that they were getting brewing with green hop, the different layers, the different fruits, the different excitement that they were getting from it, and this was a fair few years ago now, and it was when it was a really new hop, and you could just feel the energy, you could feel the excitement from the brewers talking about it, and that was what was so exciting for me, and that got me hyped up as well. And then we went out and we spoke to some of the growers, and the growers were just absolutely hyped to talk about Strata. They were talking about their agronomics. They were saying that it's such a hop that grows so well, that they were talking that it took a lot less water in terms of irrigation. It took a lot less kind of intervention in terms of like chemicals and pesticides. It had an early pick window, so it could come out earlier. In terms of, it just needed less work. In terms of everything for them, they absolutely loved growing it. So their energy is just really easy to bounce off. So we're there for Hop Harvest, just thinking, oh my god, these hops smell amazing. And then in addition to that, every single grower was like, we absolutely love this hop because it's amazing to grow, and it's going to be better. It's going to be great for the environment as well, in that it takes less water and it comes out the ground earlier, and you're just like, oh my god, this is amazing. And the hype from that is equally as good as the sensory brewer thing that you're getting in the bars. And I'm just like, oh my god, this is like incredible. And then we come back to the UK, and as Loughran, we're the guys and girls and people, whatever, that bring hops from America to the UK to brewers like Siren, and we're here to like bring the hops, but also to try and bring some of the energy and enthusiasm back. And I was just like so infused with this personal connection.
Strata was introduced to us in 2016 when Jim from Indie Hops wanted to show us what was coming down the pipeline from what him and OSU were working on. And together the brewery decided to do a single hop beer to see what was happening. This was pretty unique because there wasn't much experimental hops that were making waves at that time, and we got to have one of the first ones of that era that was about to blow up the scene and pretty much change craft beer for a 4 or 5 year period. Our first beer that we brewed with Strata, which was X331 at the time, was no pulp. And the reason it got that name is our R&D brewer, Dave Coyne, and I had a sample right after dry hop, and we couldn't believe the amount of orange that was coming out of it. Every flavor of orange, whether it was mandarin or caracara, whether it was candied orange to orange peel and zest, it was all oranges, but without any of the bite, which was pretty amazing. And we knew it had a little bit of a future, but we didn't know what it was going to go to once we decided to put it into a production beer. Once we got into a production beer, we presented it to our three-way partners from that year, Reuben's Brews and Great Notion, and they just were mind blown that there could be so much coming out of one hop. It was literally the hop that could hang out with any or stand alone. We threw Strata into 2017 three-way, which was also our first hazy IPA that we put into a production scene, and it was considered and still is considered one of the best hazy IPAs we've ever made and set the trend for hazy IPA Pacific Northwest, not only because of working with great breweries like Reuben's and Great Notion, but because we had a hop that when we were trialing still was X331. It wasn't named, so it was something to showcase a hop that was not been availed in the industry, and it hit like a storm. We were very fortunate that Indie Hops decided we could have a giant chunk of the year's harvest to be able to put in this beer and be ones that presented it to the whole United States, if not farther out.
You know, as far as what Strata brings to beer, I think it brings a mix of flavors, of a nice mix of fruitiness. I particularly like the passion fruit component that often comes through, but then it's tied together with this cannabis herbal component, dried chili peppers, which is just a whole nother category of flavors that seem to really set off that fruit nicely.
The reason I love brewing with Strata is that it can come off in so many different characteristics. Like discussed, it could be very, very peach forward to a nice citrus, a little bit of diesel, a lot of marijuana, depending on who you're getting it from. So we've been able to use it in almost any style of beer out there and be able to create unique flavors that nobody would guess would be coming from a single hop. The other part about it is that it's such a good buddy hop that never overpowers anything like an Australian hop would, or like Nelson could, or even Simcoe for that matter. It will just flow in and out with all the other hops. It's been a staple for us to use in things like Sherman right here, or for seasonals, that we really want to showcase what we can do with just simple grain bill and a couple of hops here and there.
Yeah, lots of memories connected to Strata. One of them in particular I remember was after a long day of hop selection in September a few years ago. But we'd of course been rubbing a lot of Strata. And we got on our bikes to ride over to Gigantic Brewing and meet a couple of the brewers for some beers. And on the way, cannabis had just been legalized in Portland or in Oregon. And on the way, we just constantly were smelling what I thought was cannabis, you know, the wafting joint smoke. And I kept thinking, is everybody at every house smoking cannabis now? And I finally realized that it was the smell of my hands. It was actually Strata.
Strata is really, really important to me because it got to be the first hop that I seen from experimental hop yards to full-blown take over the country in every IPA style, every pale ale, even lagers coming through. And I was a part of the industry when Citra Mosaic was taken off, but I didn't get to see it as an experiment. And definitely not around for hops like Simcoe, Centennial, and Chinook, since I've only been in the industry for 15 years. But it was fascinating to watch this hop grow from something that was just a citrus bomb to now being anything from a diesel Nelson clone-like hop to the biggest peach bomb in the world, and seeing it spread from grower to grower to state and watching its development and knowing that we've had a big impact in its growth by releasing Freeway with it that year.
Well, I think that the impact Strata has had on the wider brewing community is to give brewers another great option that just can really light up an IPA all by itself. I mean, you had Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe. I think Strata is right in there in that category of a go-to hop that a brewer can depend on in many ways.
It was the first hop in the last few years, and definitely the main hop in the last few years, that's made brewers, I think, open their mind a little bit to be like, oh yeah, you don't have to use those same three whatever hops in IPAs and pale ales every single time. You can use that and your beer is going to be equally as big, equally as punchy, and still be super enjoyable, and your customers are still going to go, oh yeah, I want that. And that drinkers in tap rooms are going to go, oh yeah, that's awesome, and that's going to be super drinkable but super punchy, and like it sings loud enough that it can put up a fight with those other big hops, and I think that's awesome. But in then doing that, it's made brewers go, oh yeah, and if we do that, there's other new varieties that we can use. But also, do you remember all those other old classic aroma varieties, the big C hops, the big whatevers, your Amarillos, the hops that were in those amazing IPAs that we forgot about a little bit, the Westies? Shall we have a go on those again? And I think like it's enabled a bit of a revival of some classics as well as the new ones. Like I think it shouted loud enough that it made everyone go, oh yeah, we're stuck in this mind warp of using the same thing over and over again. Like let's just mix up a little bit. So I think the kind of the impact it's had on the wider brewing community is that it's made everyone just use the spice cupboard a little bit more. I think that's been the impact, is that it's made everyone a bit more excited and a bit more adventurous, look around a little bit more.
Strata has definitely impacted the brewing community as being one of the main staples to come out in the last 20 years. We had Citra, Mosaic, Simcoe, and then there was a lull for about 5 or 6 years where not much was coming out in the experimental yards that was making waves. And we have a couple now that have just jumped out, like Crush, which was just released. But for a big period of almost 10 years, not many experimental hops made it to all the beers that were coming out of the States and then eventually worldwide. So it's been pretty dang neat to have another tool in the toolbox to be able to pull and know that it's going to create something beautiful. When working with Siren on creating a Strata forward beer, we really looked into the highlights that we could get out of very specific lots of Strata. The one that we were really shooting for is what we consider to be Peach O Strata. There's a couple of farms, if not one specific farm, Goshi Farms in the Willamette Valley, that has a lot each year that tastes like peachos or the ripest peach in the world. And we wanted to make sure people got to taste that in England. We're fortunate enough to where we get to pick through 15 different lots of Strata every year to find exactly what we want and then be able to contract for about 4 to 5 and play with it. But we really wanted to hit the peacho aspect for this one. So while we were using Strata in a couple of different forms, being T90 and CGX, we also brought in Citra T90 and Citra Dynaboost to be able to punch up that peach character to make it taste like a gummy coming straight out of a can. Nice and soft, nice and fluffy, and just overwhelmingly juicy qualities out of something that's around 6%. While working on the recipe, we realized some techniques that we were learning over the years in different salt additions and different pH balances and temperatures. And one thing that we were honing in on for this one was getting the pH down low enough to where the aggressiveness from the bitterness wasn't coming through. We do have a bittering addition in this one, but we didn't want any bittering coming through, just flavor. So dropping the pH down to 5.1 before any hops hit the hot side, we ended up getting really soft quality that lasted from first sip to after your first pint was done for 5 minutes. And we also focused that on the cold side to make sure that when the hops hit the beer, the pH wasn't high enough to start pulling the astringencies, the tannins that are coming from these hops. We just wanted that peacho character to really shine.
I think my message to people trying Strata for the first time in beer would be to just enjoy the wide range of flavors that it imparts in the beer. There's a lot to enjoy. I think as you get through an entire pint, you're going to find flavors that you didn't necessarily notice on the first sip. So I would say enjoy that whole pint, and the next recommendation would be to have a second one.
A big thing that I hope all the drinkers get out of this beer is the uniqueness of Strata, and something that most people wouldn't see in a hazy IPA. Strata kind of gets used on the West Coast IPAs a lot around here, but for us it's always been a hazy IPA hop. We really, really want you to get some of that gummy character out of it, really want you to see the softness of something that can be so bright citrusy, but then the exact opposite kind of a lot that you use.